again. So in the world that we live in today, we have dirty radiation, dirty electricity, incoherent energetic fields. We have all these things that are tough for the body to deal with because it's not in coherence with the way that the body's supposed to work. So because of that, we're now sinking to it. That's how the Spanish flu passed. That's how COVID passes. Because how is it that one person can get sick without ever coming into contact with another person physically? Because you're sinking into something. And that sinking into that bioresonant field can be a productive thing or a counterproductive thing. It all has to do with the environment that you put yourself in. The environment is extremely important. We have three different things going on here. Number one, we have something called cellular charge. Number two, we have something called pH. And number three, we have your oxygen levels. Every single one of these things are the same exact thing, expressed differently. I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean before I jump into that. A low electrical charge in your cells is disease. A high electrical charge in your cells is health. A low pH, otherwise known as an acidic pH, is disease. A higher, more alkaline pH is health. A low level of oxygen is disease. And a high level of oxygen in your body is health. If you have one of these high, all will be high. If you have one of these low, all will be low. The reason why I'm showing you all three is because if you forget one, you have another two engines to work with to do the same exact thing. And then I'm going to show you how the system actually helps you on every single one of these levels from a scientific standpoint, in a way that we can all understand. So cellular charge. Health doesn't start outside of your body. Health starts within your cells, within the electrical charge of your cells. Every single one of us conduct electricity. We are electrical beings by fact, not by opinion, not by theory. We are literally electrical beings. So knowing that we're electrical beings, what charge is associated with health and what charge, lower, deficient electrical charge in the cells, is associated with disease? And the answer is very simple. You have a spectrum that's measured in something called millivolts, MV for short. 70 to 90 millivolts is optimal. This is where health resides when it comes to the optimal charge of your body. Anywhere approaching down here, specifically 20 and below, is where cancer and disease resides. So it's as simple as increase the electrical charge in your cells, and you will render an environment that is impossible for disease to exist. That's how simple. Forget about all the intricacies. This is your 1 + 1 = 2 on the level of health. That's what the cellular charge allows us to understand. So again, put yourself in an environment that's charged at 70 to 90 millivolts, electrically speaking, and you will experience your cells then sinking to the 70 to 90 millivolts. So if you're at a state of 30, but you're in contact with this environment, what's going to happen? You're going to go from 30 and be charged until you come to the 70, because you sink to the environment that you're in. It all comes back to that simple understanding of the environment that you're in is the environment that you become. That's number one. Number two is your pH. Same thing expressed in a different way. You have your neutral, which is about 7.2-ish, somewhere around there. Down here is acidic, and up here is alkaline. We know that cancer exists in acidic bodies. You go to a cancer patient, check their pH levels. They're not going to be in an alkaline environment. They're going to be in an acidic environment. So that's another engine to work with, because if you can change your pH from one that's acidic to one that's more alkaline, guess what you also do? That's called charging the electrical charge intracellularly of your cells, all doing the same thing. So the goal is to come more towards here, to understand that this is health and this is disease. And the last part is your oxygen level. There's a doctor named Dr. Otto Warburg in the 18 or 1900s, I forget which date exactly. I think it was the end of the 1800s at some point. whatever the date was. He won the Nobel Prize for proving something that is very simple in a phrase. And that phrase says, deprive a cell of 35% of its oxygen for 48 hours, and that cell will turn cancerous. That means that an oxygen deficient environment is one that will lead to a low charge in your cells and therefore turn into cancer. This is how all these engines are interconnected. They're all one and the same, expressed differently. So even things like breath work, that's why they help heal the body, because you're bringing in oxygen to the body, specifically breath work through your nose. Why there and less through your mouth? Not saying that the mouth isn't a great thing to breathe from, but your nose has a passageway that goes closer to your brain. You're bringing oxygen closer to your brain. That oxygen is now being distributed to your brain. Your brain is the hub of everything that your body does. And from there it passes to the rest. So nasal breathing is a very, very powerful practice when it comes to healing oneself. It's truly as simple as that when you understand oxygen levels. So again, low oxygen level environment is sickness. Higher oxygen-rich environments is health. Those are your three engines. Now, why does that matter? The reason why that matters is because specifically when we understand that this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and it's all one and the same, and if we can perfect one, you perfect all. What the Energy Enhancement System technology is doing is focusing specifically on your cellular charge. And by focusing on your intracellular charge and bringing you back to optimal, it fixes this, and it brings you, or helps your body bring itself, I should say, from a state of health, from a state of disease, into a state of health. Because what's the body always trying to do? To heal itself. Albert Einstein, he said, look deep into nature and you'll understand everything a whole lot better. Well, you don't even need to look into nature. Look at your own arm when you cut it. What happens? You could be asleep. You could be in a coma for 6 months. If you cut your arm, there's an intelligence in the body that causes for that cut to repair itself. It will scab, it will then grow new skin, and you don't have to tell it what to do in order to do that. It does it because that's the natural function of everything. It's always trying to heal itself. So the next logical step is if we put it in an environment to help it do what it tries to always do best, then it can do it a whole lot better. So focused on your cellular charge, let's understand this technology from a deeper but simple standpoint that's really interesting. The technology itself, we don't have it here because the center wasn't big enough to hold you guys. But if we did, you would see, if you're looking at it from the side, how many of you have actually seen the system yourself? So what you would see is, if you're looking at it from the side, something that looks like a black box. And then looking at it from the side, you would see a screen that from the front obviously looks like this, with a bunch of lines, movement, and color. We're going to explain every single piece of this from a scientific standpoint so you guys understand. Now with the foundation that we just set of health is one, or something that you tune to based on your environment. This creates that environment. How? We're going to go step by step. We're going to call this piece 1, and we're going to call this piece 2. We're going to start with piece 1. Dr. Michael calls this your engine field generator. What that really is an engine, in this case using a computer, to create an energetic field, in this case an electromagnetic field, EM for short, in a specific way that will create a coherent environment. So over here, you're dealing with the scalar part of the technology. What is scalar? Let's not use big words and understand what that actually means. Scalar, to simplify it, is this. We have, in our limited understanding of the world, something called the speed of light. What the speed of light is really just the end of the spectrum of where we can't see past, for the most part, with our eyeballs, basically. Everything from 0 to 186,000 miles per second, which is the speed of light, is what we call reality, is what we call the matrix, is where your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet exist. All those things exist within the confines of the speed of light. But there's something faster than that. And when you break the speed of light, you go into what we call the scalar field. That's all scalar means. I'll go deeper to explain what it means on a deeper level in just a second. So now that you understand both sides, this is slower than the speed of light and faster than the speed of light. They call it scalar and vector. You don't have to remember this. I'll give you other words to remember it. In spiritual terms, they call this side 5D, and they call this side 3D. In the common person terms, they call this non-physical and material. That's the only difference. That's what's going on here. You can call it spiritual, you can call it whatever you want. It's just beyond the speed of light, something that is beyond the matter that we understand and how it works. So right now, health only operates, even, let's say that's a light bulb, even holistic health, that probably most of us, if not all of us in the room, are a part of and very interested in, still, for the most part, only deals with this part of the spectrum. And there's more. Because you don't exist in just this part of the spectrum. You exist in this part and this part. We see this and we say you can't pass it. But when you understand how energy works, the speed of light is only a limitation that we experience. Are you guys understanding so far what's being said? Okay. So there's a law that all of us were taught when we were about 12 or 13 years old, if not younger, in our first science class. And that law is called the law of conservation. The law of conservation, basic law, fact of science as we know it, says energy cannot be created or destroyed. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, what does that imply? That implies that there is something that's infinite. Because if there's something that can't be created or destroyed, that means that there's something that has no beginning or end. That's another way for explaining infinity. So if energy can't be created or destroyed, there must be something or some way to tap into this source, or whatever you want to call it, that will give you that free energy, that infinite flow of how things work. Nikola Tesla tried doing that and he was killed for it. Because when you do something like that and you tap into the implication of the law of conservation, you tap into what energy cannot be created or destroyed really means, what you're doing is saying the people that run our gas industry and our oil industry and even our electric industry can no longer meter us if we know how to do that. If they can no longer meter our use of electricity or energy, they lose all their power and their control. That's why time and time and time again, those people are taken out because they're a threat to the establishment as we know it. Now that's in the energy sector. What happens when you move into energy medicine? That's an enemy and threat to Big Pharma. Because Big Pharma tells you, you need to depend on us for your health. And I'm standing here and telling you, you don't need any of us. Because you have your own health within yourself. So long as you know how it works. Because truth be told, and here's what's really unique about EESystem, you'll know that it's successful when the technology is no longer needed. It might take a while to get to that point. The EESystem is a stepping stone to get to an ultimate reality, and that ultimate reality does not include or consist of technology outside of you. Because when you live in a perfect world with perfect energetic environments, you're not going to need an engine field generator to create a torsion field, which I'll explain in just a second. The fact of the matter is we're living in a very sick world. So we're going to need assistance along the way right now to return back to ourselves. Not get to a destination where you're always going to need something outside of you. So it's a counterintuitive understanding of how business models are supposed to work. But Big Pharma and the medical system wants to hold you to something forever. People like Jeffrey succeed when you come and you heal and you return back to your health. And we have 8 billion people to do that to, so there's no shortage. But there will come a point, we have a lot of people, but there will come a point where I truthfully believe, and I'll even go as far to say that I know that we'll get to that point. You know how I know? Because it's a law. Because that's what everything once was. And by the law of how everything works in cycles, that's where everything will return right back to. So let's go back to energy can't be created or destroyed. If that implies that energy is infinite in and of itself, how do we tap into the infinite field of energy beyond the speed of light, called the scalar field, called a scalar vortex, called a torsion field, otherwise known as toroidal fields? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the toroidal field is very simple. It's an energy field that looks like that. There's a vortex in the middle. Energy flows in all directions, at all times, with no beginning and no end. This is what energy cannot be created or destroyed in action looks like. There's an infinite flow that we're tapping into. And that infinite flow is called your toroidal field. The question is, how do we recreate a toroidal field of energy in a world that does everything against the torsion field? Because a torsion field is perfect. It's coherent flow of energy, infinitely. Free energy, perfect. Health, that's the basis of everything in this world. There's a movie called Thrive by Foster Gamble. It came out in 2012. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It explains the base energetic structure of everything, found in everything. From the human heart to the human body to a carrot to an apricot to an apple, all the way to the energetic field of this very planet. And it's called a torsion field. Your torsion field is your perfect flow of energy, your perfect environment that when everything is working optimally, you sync with that bioresonant field and become that energetic perfect flow of energy, which we call health. In other words, this right here is your birthright. We've given it away because we've lost the awareness of how technology is supposed to work. So we've created things like 5G. 5G is just taking electricity and certain energy in a way that's incoherent with the body. 5th generational technology. So is fourth generation and 3rd generation and all of that. Because it's not using the natural energy of this universe and of creation to create something. It's saying we know better, we're going to do it ourselves. Well, you create problems when you think you know better because there's a flow and order to how these things work. So technology is not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if it's used without the proper awareness, but it's a beautiful thing if it's used with the awareness of the laws of creation. The EESystem is a form of technology. It's using computers, it's using monitors, it's using light to create something in a coherent way. So it's like you can use a knife to kill somebody, and you can use a knife to make a salad. What are you going to choose to do? So how do we recreate this torsion field? The way that we recreate this torsion field is very simple. This is the part that you're going to need to remember, but I promise you it's not hard. This is the actual science behind it. If you have 2 identical electromagnetic fields, that I'm going to call an EM field for short. When you have 2 identical electromagnetic fields and you align them precisely, the merge point creates a torsion field. But that's a 2-point torsion field. Is there a way to make it more stable? Dr. Michael didn't recreate the wheel. She just built on top of it. And the genius of the technology is saying, forget the 2 points, let's make it 4. Because 4 is more stable than 2. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So she said, let's take 4 identical EM fields and that merge with precision alignment, because they have to laser calibrate these machines to each other within 1/100th of an inch when they actually install it. The merge still creates a torsion field, but it's a lot more stable than the first one. Because at the end of the day, we're recreating something. So we're going to need to recreate it as close to nature as possible. The way that you do it is by tapping into the laws of creation. This is how you access this field, through this part of the field. It's using and understanding that this is all part of the same spectrum. How do we just bridge the gap and connect all of them? So again, a 4-point identical, and identical is very important, electromagnetic field, the merge will create your perfect torsion field. Now let me explain it in terms that's even more understandable without using the word electromagnetic field. Let's take water, okay? If you have, before the water, if you have two cars that weigh the same weight, that are coming together at the same exact acceleration, that are perfectly aligned in the same exact model, identical cars, at identical speeds with identical weight, when they hit, what happens? According to physics, it doesn't move left and it doesn't move right. It comes to a perfect standstill, so long as they're precisely aligned. So with water, let's look at what that actually looks like. You have hose 1 and hose 2. Same exact width, same exact water pressure, perfectly aligned. So long as they're identical streams of water, precisely aligned, what's going to happen? They're going to hit each other, and you're going to have one stream going up, and you're going to have one stream going down. That's your two electromagnetic fields, understanding it through hoses and water. Now let's add another two. If you're looking at it now not from the side, but from up top, and we add a third one, and a fourth one, right here, when you add 4 hoses precisely aligned that are the exact same thing, hitting each other, you're going to have water going up, down, left, and right. Now, if you take out the factor of gravity, that water will create a torsion field perfectly. Why do I take out the factor of gravity? Because the system is not using water, it's using light. Light is not impacted by gravity. It's not matter, it's energy. So that light is doing exactly what the hoses are doing, only with light instead of water, creating an energetic field that we call a torsion field. That's the shape that you're actually producing when you're creating what, for example, in Jeffrey Center, he has 4 towers, identical towers. Every single one of those black boxes, the engine field generators, are identical to the one across from it and to the one next to it. And when you have those identical ones precisely and perfectly, you're now creating a 4-point stable torsion field. Now let's ground it back to reality for a second. What that means, to remind everybody, is if you're creating a perfect 4-point stable torsion field that's coherent and harmonious and healthy in its flow, and you spend enough time in it, what's going to happen? Your body will sync to that environment, just like your body synced to the environment outside with the incoherent fields that gave 40% of Americans cancer, that caused heart disease to be the first leading cause of death in America. And I don't know the rest of the world's numbers, but it's probably not far off. So it's all about the environment. That's what this part of the technology does. By the way, that scalar field, that torsion field, goes out 2.2 miles in every direction. When people think about it, they say, oh, okay, so it covers a radius of 2.2 miles left and right. No, no, no. It creates a sphere, 2.2 miles down, 2.2 miles up, 2.2 miles left, and 2.2 miles right. There is a spherical shape to the base of all energy in this world. That's your torsion field. It's not a 1D or 2D thing. It's a 3D energetic field going in all directions, just like we explained with the hoses. So that's how this part works. Now, whenever I bring that up, some people say, oh, okay, so I could be 2 miles away. I'll do the same thing. Well, no, because there's another part to the technology. Number one, technically, you could be 2 miles away. You could be 2.2 miles away and get the impact from what this is doing to create this. But that would mean that you're only looking at this part of the spectrum. Just like the problem that we did in the world today is only look at this part of the spectrum. How do we combine the two? How do we bridge the gap between 5D and 3D? How do we bridge the gap between scalar and vector? How do we bridge the gap between the non-physical and the physical? And it's very simple. You have to operate coherency and create coherent fields in both sides of that spectrum. Because if you're only paying attention to one, if you're only paying attention to your body within this physical world, well, then you forget about all the energetic stuff. If you're only paying attention to the energetic stuff, then that's great. That will do a lot of great things. It's better than just paying attention to the body. But there's a lot of great things that you can do to boost the body's health on a cellular level through using this. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Your light within the spectrum. So we're going to move to the engine field generator that creates your scalar field or your torsion field into this part. And now we're going to explain how, yes, this creates coherency in that field. Now we're going to create coherency in our physical field as well. So, what are you seeing on these screens? A lot of people, when they look at it, they say, okay, there's movement, there's different speeds. Some are going up, some are going down, and there's different colors. But there's also a part that is not really tangible that's going on with these as well. So let's go and break those four parts down for a second. Your movement and your speed. What is that moving according to? Two things. There's something called, I hope I can spell it right, the Fibonacci sequence. Fibonacci. Am I spelling it right? Yeah? I spelled it right? I hope so. If I didn't, it's because of his last name. Okay, so the Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers that literally reflects creation as we know it on all realms. The Fibonacci sequence, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, I think it's like 1, 2, 5, 8, 13, 21, 44, and it keeps going. Basically, the way that it works is you take numbers from 1 to 2, you add them up, you get to 3. You take 3 and you add the last number, which is 2, which is 5. You take 5 plus the last number, which is 3, you get 8. You take 8 plus the last number, which is 5, you get 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 plus 13 is 44, and it keeps going forever. There's a specific ratio to every single one of those numbers, from 2 to 5, from 5 to 8, from 8 to 13, from 13 to 21, from 21 to 44. They call that the golden ratio, the golden mean. That sequence of numbers is how your screens are moving in accordance with, in the units of seconds. So you'll see sometimes when you're looking at it, some are going faster, some are going slower, and some, at some point, just switch direction. That's all a transmission of the Fibonacci sequence. That's what it's embodying. That's what it's transmitting. The Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers that flowers bloom according to on fractal mathematics of how their petals come out, that embryos grow according to, that cells multiply according to. It's seen everywhere in nature. That's why it's called the golden ratio. They don't understand how it's everywhere, but it is, so you can't neglect it. So those sets and ratios of numbers is extremely important when it comes to coherency in the body, because that's what creation is. And creation is coherent, not distorted. So your Fibonacci sequence is a part of what you're seeing transmitted through the screen. Another part is something called, I'm probably going to butcher this as well, the Schumann's resonance. Hope I'm spelling it right. They all have weird last names. They're not spelled right. But the Schumann's resonance is basically the heartbeat of Earth. When you go to Jeffrey Center, you're going to see towers facing each other perfectly. They're not just sitting there randomly. You see 2 diagonal and 2 diagonal, or however they're facing each other. Everybody has a different configuration, creating the same thing, because that light, those photons, when they hit themselves, and when they implode with precise alignment, you create the charge. So that's how you experience your environment of 70 to 90 millivolts. And then from there, and this is my favorite part of the whole thing, is color. This is the fourth part of that screen. A lot of people look at color and they're like, it's red, it's purple, it's yellow, it's green. But if we understand what color really is, you can actually use color as a form of a healing modality. There's a reason why light therapy is starting to become more and more and more accepted in the medical industry, because they don't really have a choice. They're going to try to find a way to really monetize off of it. It's starting. They haven't done that yet. But there are ways to use light in very simple and coherent and affordable ways as well, so long as you know how to use it. So let's understand color for a second. Color, I'm going to take these off just to use that part. I'm going to take all of them. Go to color. So let's go back to what we said in the beginning. What we said in the beginning is there's a spectrum that's infinite of energy, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. We've divided that spectrum according to the speed of light. And as we said, over here is scalar, and over here is what we call vector, or light within the spectrum. 0 to the speed of light in terms of frequency. So this is really our spectrum of color. Why does the rainbow start at red and end at purple? Well, it doesn't start at red and end at purple. Our perception starts at red and ends at purple. There are phases before red and there are phases after purple. And the more spiritually evolved you become, the more you'll be able to see those other shades. But we're sticking to the collective right now. So the collective is from within this part now. We've already dealt with balancing this part through the engine fuel generator. Now we have to balance this part. So we have something called nanometers. And that's what color is based on. You don't have to remember this, but 360 nanometers to 720 nanometers. Some call it 400 to 700, but again, it doesn't matter. There is a spectrum of energy, in this case measured in the units of nanometers, and that's your difference between red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The difference between violet from red is a wavelength. Your nanometers is the wavelength. So, by the way, just another fun fact, 5G, when they started installing that technology, it works on a higher frequency network, so things move faster. But when things move faster, the higher your vibration, the shorter your wavelength. So this should actually be one second, I just blanked on something. That means it would be opposite, I would think. But the law is, the faster your vibration, the shorter your wavelength. So on 5G transmitters, they now need them on every other light post. Whereas on 4G transmitters, they could have had them a mile away. Because the frequency that it's working on would travel further on the slower network than on the faster network. So with your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, it just so happens to be that the human body, whenever you see those people sitting in like the pose and you see the 7 chakras, are perfectly aligned with those 7 energy centers, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And today, maybe some of us in this room understand that, but the Western medical system basically just calls, this the cardiovascular system, your heart chakra, your green, this the digestive system, this the reproductive system, and so on and so forth. But what's really going on is thousands of years ago when this was established, it was established off of understanding how this matrix works. Because color is simply an energy that's expressed through our perception. So it's just a frequency, it's an energy that in this case you could see, that's red, yellow, orange, green. When you see your food, for example, your food that's actually from this planet, that's whole in its entirety, not made in a lab, not manipulated in any way, is very colorful. And if what I'm saying is true, then that means that your yellow chakra, which on the physical level is your digestive system, on the emotional level holds energies like depression, things like that. That means that foods like bananas and mangoes and pineapples and lemons should be good for your digestive system. And if you go on Google and you check what foods are good for what, if you go on DuckDuckGo, or whatever you want to use, you will see that every single color of a food and what that food is good for is in perfect alignment with these parts of the body. So why is that relevant? Because color is used as a healing modality, not just through the food that you consume, but through the light that you're around. You give the body coherent light, it's coherent. You give the body incoherent light, it becomes diseased, it becomes sick. The prime function of DNA is to store light. That's what DNA is here to do. It's the storage of light. Again, you give it good light, it gives you good results. You give it incoherent light, it gives you poor results. When you're looking at this screen, you're basically looking at, with all those other things mixed in, a rainbow. Depending on what code you would put that in, what colors you would want to put on that screen, because there are different codes when you program that technology, you're looking at color. And we know that color is now light that is now being stored by your DNA, and the intelligent design of the body is to then take that light, take that energy, take that color, because it's all one and the same thing, and throw it to the proper parts of the body to rebalance that part of the body. So that's your light portion, your color portion, what Dr. Michael would call your polychromatic therapy, so-called, which is just another word for many different colors, many different lights, to help the body heal itself. So now let's break down everything that I just said into about 100 seconds. And here it is in 2-minute version, now that you guys know the bigger picture. Number one, proper environment, healthy environment renders a healthy body. Put yourself in a coherent environment, you experience coherency in your body. Number two, broken up into 3 points with 3 different avenues to experience health. Electrical charge, I'll write it down. I'll write cellular charge to make that easier to understand. Cellular charge, pH, oxygen. Any of these are low, you have disease. Any of these are high, you have health. All of them are the same thing expressed differently. Pay attention to one, fix it on that level, all other levels will follow suit because they're one and the same expressions of the same thing in a different way. The EESystem focuses on specifically cellular charge, but also creating a coherent environment in order to allow your body to sync to that coherent environment. Your torsion field is your basic field of creation, your basic energetic field that is infinite in its flow. You recreate a torsion field and sit in it for long enough, your body remembers its birthright, which is also a torsion field. The technology itself is your engine field generator, which through what we spoke about, perfect alignment with identical electromagnetic fields, creates your torsion field. Your torsion field is important on this part of the spectrum to rebalance the scalar field, which is your 5th dimensional waves. Your monitor is important because it transmits everything of this part of the spectrum, light within the spectrum, to balance your 3D. What we used to call holistic health only dealt with this. And what holistic health really is bridging the gap between this, dissolving this to understanding that this is a limitation of our perception. And once we understand that this and this are one and the same, and we balance all simultaneously on both the scalar field and the light within the spectrum field, which is the matrix reality as we call it, you experience health in all ways. But not because the technology is doing it for you, because the technology is simply giving you balance here and balance here, and when you have balance in both, you return back to this. When you return back to this, your body reclaims its health, which is its birthright once again. That's your 2-minute version of the technique. Now we can go into questions. If anybody has any questions on any parts of what was just spoken about. Yes?
So you're talking about normalizing vibration in the body through the torsion fields. Generally, I think in terms of vibration and cell-to-cell communication, talked about DNA being storing light. DNA vibrates also. And when we get sick, our vibratory communication is off in the body. So you're talking about basically bringing the body back into an optimal state through the vibration. Everything is vibration. Also, when you talked about those 3 factors, pH, cellular charge, and oxygen, the body wants to produce more negative hydrogen ions that convert to ADP and ATP. So that's happening, right? When you increase the charge in your cell, pH is normalized, and your oxygen levels go up. That is probably the end result.
Your ATP production is a fourth engine of the same thing, expressed differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I studied water a little bit, and I'm sure you're familiar with Hunza water.
No, I don't know Hunza water.
It contains a higher level of negative hydrogen ions.
Gotcha.
Very important because that is the substrate that helps the body produce more ATP and ADP. And that water is associated with longevity and health. This goes back about 100 years. It was discovered, and it was also, I think Tesla understood it also, because he worked with these negative ions and low frequency energy.
Yep.
But this all ties in. You just came from a different angle with this scale of technology.
100%.
Presented it really, really well.
Thank you. It's all the same thing, and what you said in the beginning was basically what Nikola Tesla said. Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, and you understand the secrets of the universe. So they're not really secrets. It's not difficult. We just aren't taught this. We've forgotten this. So it becomes something that's like, what do? We give our power to the people with the pills instead of yourself. So 100%. It's all saying the same exact thing.
Point field and energy also.
Oh, that's one thing I didn't say. When you're creating something like this with your torsion field through the electromagnetic fields, some people say, what about radiation, right? You're using these things. It seems like there's a lot of radiation, but no. This 0 point, which is your torsion field and what it's creating, creates something called a null zone. A null zone nullifies that radiation. So it takes it out of the equation, basically, just for everybody to understand that. Any other questions? Yes?
I don't know if this is valid, but I'll just say it anyway.
Sure.
You pointed out the cellular charge and the pH and the oxygen. Is there one in particular that will carry the others with them?
All of them will carry
No
on.
matter which one you start with.
No matter which one.
Get a benefit.
No matter which one.
When you say pH, I think about your talks about acidic foods. And I know you're vegan.
Born and raised, yeah.
So is that what you would recommend, more vegetarian?
Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second.
Honestly, I love beef.
Yeah.
But I have some health issues, and I want to improve it. And various practitioners that I see keep saying, eat more vegetables, eat more vegetables.
Yeah.
I said, if someone would cut them up for me, and then I would eat them.
Okay,
So you got to convince me that going.
I'm not going to convince you. I'm just going to show you something.
Vegetarian.
So first of all, yes, I was born and raised a vegan, but I don't want to impose that on anybody because there are some people that go and do that, and they feel weak and they don't feel well and all that. So I don't think that there's one way that's perfect for everybody simultaneously. I think that over time we'll probably all eventually get back there, and the reason why I say that is not because that's right and another way is wrong, but simply as you evolve spiritually, you will desire food with less matter and more light. In other words, food that has a higher water content. Meat, even bread, is closer to like 70% water to matter. Cucumbers are about 97% water to matter. Watermelon is about 97% water to matter. So I want to share something on what you just said, and I'm going to use this to show it. But I don't want anybody to hear what I'm saying as go vegan because it's right, and if you don't, you're doing something wrong. It's very important for me for you guys to understand that that's not what I'm trying to say. And I think I've known people that have gone vegan and it was not good for them in the way that they did it. So I don't think that it's the right way for everybody, especially, just saying, ooh, okay, this may be better, so let's do it, and then not listening to your body. I think you need to honor your body, you need to listen to your body, and trust it in terms of where it's telling you to go instead of where your mind is telling you to go. With that being said, there are certain sciences that, I'll share something over here that's not based on opinion, it's not based on my belief. I don't want to give you guys my beliefs here, because that would be me imposing that. I'm going to share something strictly scientifically speaking, and you guys come down to your own conclusions here. There's a food pyramid that the FDA gave us, and that one gives you cancer. Okay? That's not the food pyramid I'm talking about. There's another food pyramid that's real. And it's real because you don't need to be taught this one. The second I show it to you, you're never going to forget it, because it's intuitive. What is all life based on? Light. And what is the closest source of light that we can get to in this life? The sun. The sun is what gives energy to everything as we know it, physically speaking. And we are still in physical vessels, we got to remember that. Yes, we exist in other places and other dimensions, but we're still physical human beings experiencing ourselves as physical human beings and beyond. So it's still a part of the equation. Being that light is the main form of sustenance in its purest form of everything, then light is what we're naturally trying to always get back to. So, this is the sun. And this is your pyramid. This is your real food pyramid. And it's not based on anything but what we call the dilution of energy in its purest form of life. So scientifically speaking, this right here, level 1, is called autotrophs. Autotrophs are things that make their own food. We don't make our own food. Animals don't make their own food. Plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, herbs, through things like photosynthesis, create their own food. They convert source energy, light, into food for themselves. That's level 1. Then level 2 is what we call herbivores. Herbivores are things, people, animals, that eat the plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and herbs. Where do the herbivores get their energy from? They get their energy from this source, which got its energy from the source. Carnivores are animals that eat other animals, or people who eat other animals. Meat. Where are you getting your energy from when you're eating the chicken or the beef? You're getting it from the chicken that got its energy from the plants, that got its energy from the sun. Meaning this is your third level of dilution away from source. No matter what anybody wants to say about it. That's what's going on here, scientifically speaking. So if you want to connect as close to that light as possible, it would be logical to eat from as close to that light as possible. But if, in this case, you come from, and I'll get to this in a second, if you come from a lineage of people that have been eating from level 3 for so long, then maybe when you try and jump right here, it's not going to be the most comfortable thing, and it may not be good for you either. Now, I don't want to compare meat to drugs, so don't take what I'm about to say next as a comparison, but as an analogy. If you're on cocaine for a very long time, and you want to stop doing cocaine overnight, you can die from withdrawals if you stop too soon. It doesn't mean the cocaine is good, and it doesn't mean that stopping is bad. What it means is that you have a certain vibration of being because you've been doing this for so long. And when you try to shift that vibration of being from X to Y too quick, you experience a negative experience. So I think the difference, and now this is my belief, so I just want to put that out there, I believe that the difference between the people that would go vegan and feel bad and the people that would go vegan and feel good is simply where are you at, where was your lineage at, and how fast are you trying to change that. don't change it too fast because it can lead to a negative outcome. That's my belief and opinionated part of it. But let's go back to this. So here is a third form of dilution. What is PF? PF is something that has nothing to do with any of those. Those are called processed foods. Processed foods are taking nature and manipulating it. Buildings in New York City are taking nature and manipulating it. Your cement, your glass, your metal, all of those things are simply taking nature and manipulating it. So Empire State Building is still a part of nature, just in a different way, in a manipulated way. It's furthest from nature than a building made out of mud. A building made out of even brick would be further than a building made out of probably cement because of what brick is made of versus what cement is made of. Those are, say it again? Or a building made out of wood, which would be even closer. So your processed foods, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is number one, to show that no matter what level you're going to, even this one, there's nothing that's not connected to source. There's no such thing as something that's not connected to source. There's such thing as something that's further from source, but nothing that's not connected to source. So even when you eat the Dorito, okay, you're still getting something from it. But it's so manipulated and messed up in that case that that something that you're getting, which is a form of sustenance, leads to disease because it's an incoherent form of energy. When you're eating something like the animal, let's say, the animal that eats meat or the animal that eats the herbs, you're much, much closer to that. So you could still be fine and live a great life. I'm not saying that you can't be an amazing spiritual person and eat chicken. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, scientifically speaking, if you want to get closest to the least diluted form of that life, it would make sense to eat from the foods that are alive, from the foods that get their food directly from the sustenance that we're all trying to get to. So I bring that up because Dr. Sandra Rose Michael has a part of her protocol that says if you really are sick and you're trying to deal with something for a period of time, go vegan. Vegan doesn't mean plant-based. Okay? Some people, there was an event that I did at Raise a Light actually, that somebody asked a question. And they said, well, what's the difference between what you're saying and what the evil people are saying? Because the evil people are trying to tell us to stop eating meat. Well, what the evil people are doing is they're using things like Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat and Doritos, or let's go to the Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat, and disguising it as level 1 when it's really level 4. So plant-based is not level 1. Level 1 is whole in its entirety. Does that mean that we all turn to Buddhas tomorrow and start eating only whole foods? No. I eat, I have chips and crackers, okay? I don't eat meat because I wasn't brought up that way. It's just not a part of my thing. But even if you do, I'm not saying stop everything and go Buddha mode and monk mode. Just change your ratio a little bit, you know? You like beef, enjoy it. You like chicken, enjoy it. You want to have the wheat thins or the saltines or whatever it is, have fun. Just don't make it 80% of what you're eating. Still enjoy the desires in your life and have a sick time with it. You want your wine, you want your drink, you want a smoke every so often. It may not be great for you, but have fun. Have fun. Because the other part of the lesson is, number one, do everything in moderation. And number two, if you want to rise above and raise above the things that you call your vices, your addictions, you don't fight it and you don't resist it. That's a big no-no. What you do is you rise above it. Because what's an addiction? If you're this person, okay, and you operate at level 3, I'm just giving a number, and then there's your glass of wine that operates at level 4, I'm just giving a number so you understand the philosophy here, then when you drink this, you're going to feel good. Because relative to where it brought you to a place that is higher than the place you were just at. So when you drink that glass of wine that makes you feel good, it's a high. If, let's say, you're addicted to a substance, okay, that substance, whatever that substance would be, let's say, whatever, okay, substance X, operates at energy level 5, and you're at 3, then your addiction only exists relative to the energy of that substance. Instead of trying to fight it and say, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it, how do I stop it? Simply focus on yourself. And instead of trying to fight this, focus on your 3 and change it into a 6. And if you change it into a 6, you're not going to desire the 5 anymore because it's going to make you feel bad instead of good. The paradigm shift over here is if you want to rise above addiction, stop focusing on the substance that you're addicted to and start focusing on your vibration of being. If you rise above the vibration of that substance, you rise above the desire to want it. That make sense?
Yep.
And that's with food, that's with substances, that's with everything. Now again, you want to enjoy things along the way, enjoy them. But control them. Don't let them control you. That's all I'm saying. Cool.
You can earn it down.
Yes.
I guess I have a controversial question.
I love them. Go for it.
Well, the elephant in the room
Yeah.
of vaccination.
Sure.
And specifically COVID vaccine and it being a trigger for cases like cancer, which is happening in what I'm seeing in my life right now, where my dad just got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, no medical history at all. He's healthy, I would say semi-vegetarian. My mom has severe arthritis right after the first shot. So how would you use the technology and everything you just mentioned, obviously, breath work, raising the pH, but like what would you recommend people that are having all these side effects from the vaccination, being cancers, you know,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
understand.
radical thing.
I'm going to answer it on 2 different planes. Okay? Because there's a physical thing going on here. And then I'm going to use the word spiritual. There's a spiritual thing going on
I
here
agree
as
with
well.
you, it's a spiritual disease as well, yeah.
So, number 1, I haven't seen it myself, and partially I don't run my own center, so I don't get to see things every day. But I've heard many stories in terms of reports that were given to me of people feeling much better after feeling horrible after they took that injection, after spending, some people even 2 hours, 6 hours, and overnight, whatever it is. But that's not your end-all be-all. Because the technology can only do what you're ready to overcome. Okay? The technology cannot take away a lesson from you spiritually speaking. So there are some people that will go in and experience miraculous things. And there are some people that will go in and say, it's not, I don't know what's going on, it's not the same. Well, it's not the same because it's not just sitting in a technology and experiencing what the technology has to offer you. It's about understanding on the level of the spiritual dimension, your karmic cycle. Okay? What do you need to face? What do you need to deal with? What lesson do you need to learn? In other words, let's say that I, had a problem with my foot, my ankle, whatever it is, right? There could be another person with that same problem that can go into the technology and do many different things and experience amazing results. And then there could be me that no matter what I do, this is not being overcome. What's the difference? The difference is that for me, there's still a lesson that that thing has to teach me. And I don't care how powerful the technology can be, it can never take away the lessons that you came here to learn. So when you get somebody to go into a center, they need to understand that.
Right.
If you're not ready to overcome something because you didn't learn that lesson, it's not going anywhere. So there's no black and white answer to what you just said because of the spiritual component. The black and white answer on the physical component is I've seen it work and I've seen it not work. And it's because of that outlier, that outlying thing that people need to deal with. There are some people that come here to experience certain hardships, to experience certain things. All of us have our own things. Some of us have it mentally, some of us. So the point over here is to align free will and divine will. In other words, free will is what we call the ego. Divine will is what we call the soul. A lot of people in the spiritual community say you got to get rid of your ego. I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. I see those things like doctors that tell you your appendix is not function. It has no function in your body. Well, if God gave it to you, then there's a purpose for it. The question is, are you using your ego in a productive way, or are you using your ego in a counterproductive way? Your ego is an engine of your free will. Your ego is the engine that pushes you through physical reality. Your soul and your divine will is the engine that operates up there, overlooking everything all the time. If the desire of your ego can align with the desire of your soul, you're unstoppable. And that alignment is why there's 270 centers around the world today. Not because of me. Because everybody, somehow, at the same time, had an alignment. Jeffrey, he already had a center, now he's opening a second one. It's an alignment of the ego and the soul and saying, I want to open this because I'm aligning myself and what I was given in this reality with my purpose and what I came here to do. And if you align yourself with that, then the veers off the road that are expressed or come to us as cancer or heart disease or a staph infection in your leg or a dislocated shoulder, any of these things, you end up seeing them in a completely different view. You end up seeing them instead of, why is this happening to me? You get to ask a different question. What is the lesson that this is trying to teach me? What is the gift that this is trying to give me? So your father that's experiencing what he's experiencing, he may not understand what we're speaking about here, but he just received the gift. Because that hardship...
He does now.
He does now, great.
Because of me.
Beautiful. That hardship that he gets to experience, it's a privilege. Because imagine you were just on the same road all the time. You didn't get to grow. Imagine you didn't have a challenge, an obstacle to be able to deal with to get stronger. You know how many obstacles I had over the past 12 months? And you know how much of a different person I am now than I was 12 months ago?
I call them turtle medicine.
Turtle medicine, like slow.
Yeah, it forces you to slow down.
Yes.
Because you're going so fast.
100%.
And then the body symptoms, because it slows you down, brings you more into inward process versus the outward process.
Absolutely.
So that's the term. It's like a shamanic term where the turtle has
You slow down and you find that part again. Instead of always trying to be through this part. So your ego can be a bad thing if it's, taking over you. And your ego can be a good thing if it becomes a servant to you. If you're constantly asking yourself, does my desire of the ego, when I want to take an action, align with the desire of my soul, the reason why I came here in the first place, then your ego becomes your best friend. Because it's now an engine that's propelling you through this physical reality to make things happen in the 3D world while aligning them with your purpose in the higher dimensional world.
Exactly.
So the reason why I always love explaining that to people that come to centers like Jeffrey's is because the Energy Enhancement System is more than just something you come and sit down in. If you can understand these lessons, if we can teach these lessons to others before they go into these centers, maybe I'll even make a video. We can get to show it to people before they go into the people that center owners would, you would think this person should see this before they come in.
Yeah, it's a great point.
It catalyzes their growth.
Because what I'm seeing in the center is that, and what perhaps is missing, and we've been discussing it, is more of a spiritual program that when you're coming in, it's not just the physical body, but maybe listening to Joe Dispenza meditations or focusing on the colors and specific chakras. So there is a progress in what you're working on, and you are working on that alignment that you so nicely explained, because I feel sometimes people coming in, they're looking for that miracle, it's not happening, and they're not understanding.
Because they forget that part.
Exactly.
I think that's a good idea. We're working right now, as a matter of fact, just today, I spoke to Tony Robbins. We have an interview with him on June 7th, all about EES, all about the network, all about the centers, everything that's going on. So through things like that, we're about to reach a much larger crowd of people that otherwise would have never known about this. So I think now's the time to do exactly what you just said. We've established something really great, really big. Now we're moving into the education part of it, while simultaneously tapping into all these different, demographics of people all around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm co-partnering with Jeffrey here on Livingston.
Oh, nice.
And so, Livingston and Community Livingston, this type of technology is so esoteric, is so, out of their reach. And so I've been thinking a lot about the educational part, like how do you, and my friends, like how do I tell them in the most layman terms, because otherwise it's way over their heads, and that this is preventative, because if you know, Essex County has the highest cancer rates. There is pandemic happening around us because of everything we just mentioned. And so people need this, but they don't know that they need this.
Yeah.
They rather go to the, part of this hospital, to the oncologists, because that's what they know. So how do we attract them, explain it to them, and so they see that it's a preventative medicine? And I think there's a gap here, and I'm glad we have this conversation. We need to somehow reach it.
Working on it. It's a hard one. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's a matter of doing things and to catalyze the process, meaning it's not a linear thing.
Right.
It's not about how many events can you speak at. It's what's one move that you can do that will reach 1 million people in that way, as opposed to 1 million moves that reach one person.
And I think a lot of it is community building too. Like
Yes.
we have to create events, we have to teach in a way that's accessible.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, there's many centers opening up, and I'm also seeing they're not doing so well because they don't have their peaks. And so like there's one in Staten Island that's empty because they're not able to reach out to the regular people out there. It's way over their heads. And so how do we build these communities, and we teach in an accessible way, and we can create a movement? It is a movement.
Yep.
We build
And it's a
it.
process.
And it's a process.
It's a process that takes,
Yeah.
The medical field.
A lot of work.
Stand in the way too.
I don't even pay attention to it. Yes.
A couple questions, actually. So this was kind of like in the realm. So you believing or understanding what is going on actually assists you say in your feelings if you had a condition versus somebody that walks in and just doesn't understand anything and just sits in a space.
There is an objective. What time is it? I'm sorry.
It's 8:27.
Okay, perfect. There is an objective impact regardless of that intervening of you. But obviously, if you're going to set an intention and work on yourself and do certain things in or outside of the system, it will catalyze that growth no matter what. And there are rules to how to do that. There are ways to speak consciously. There are ways to act consciously. There are certain words that are more beneficial than others to use. There's the subject that you're focusing on. That's a whole other realm of understanding. But again, it's a holistic picture to understand how do we create more health, not just through technology, but through using technology and using other things to boost that we have right now. Breath work, meditation, certain rules when it comes to manifestation, we're all already doing it.
Yeah.
The question is, are you doing it consciously or are you doing it unconsciously? It's the difference of art when if I give you paint and a brush, are you just taking the paint and throwing it up? Or are you and hoping for the picture that you want?
Right.
That's called luck, right? Or are you directing it? Are you directing the movie? Well, you can't direct a movie or paint a portrait if you don't know the rules of painting. Right? The other day I went to this painting class and I thought you just have to draw this head and eyes and nose. But no, you actually draw a line and then another line and then a line a third of the way through for where the mouth and the lips go. There are rules and formulas to certain things, and if we learn those things, that's the difference between a good painter and a bad painter, a good director and a bad director, and somebody that's actually creating the life that they want to live consciously, and somebody that just kind of leaves it up to its luck or chance. There's no such thing as luck or chance when you understand cause and effect.
True, and I'm an artist, so I love that you just use that as an example, but just as you explained the free will and the divine will, divine accidents do happen.
Are they accidents?
No, that's what I'm saying, divine will comes in sometimes.
That's an order. That's an order that we've forgotten about. But there's an order to everything. There's no such thing. And a
Right,
miracle,
there are no accidents, right.
a miracle doesn't exist. A miracle is just saying we don't understand how the hell that thing happened, so we're going to call it a miracle. But a miracle cannot exist with the laws of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Go as far as in the Bible. Let's say Moses split the Red Sea, okay? That there is no miracle there. There was a mechanism to how to do something like that. There's no miracle when it comes to supernatural abilities like levitation. There's a mechanism of how to do it. The fact that 99.999% of the world don't know how to do that doesn't mean that it's a miracle. It just means that we don't know how to do that. That's all it means. There's an order to everything. And we've sat here and said, okay, well, when we don't understand the order, we either say that it's nonsense, it's a miracle, or it's impossible. What about just understand? And this is what science needs to do, and the system as a whole. They don't like exploring things that they don't understand. They don't like exploring things that they can't measure because it makes them uncomfortable. because the ego likes knowing things, and to know something means to limit everything else. Right? If energy cannot be created or destroyed, you can't know what that thing really is. You can define its characteristics based on what you think you know, but you can't know something infinite. You can know its laws, you can't know it, because there's no beginning and there's no end. So science, if you pay attention, if I came in 100 years ago and said, I can send a black box on the beach sound through the air and amplify it, you would call me a heretic and crazy. Today we call it Bluetooth. Nobody knows how that works. They do, but none of us here really know, like, what is that? You're doing something somewhere and then somehow it's transmitting somewhere else and then amplifying that energy into sound, which is a song. It's like, so because we didn't understand it back then, we called it impossible. Today, it's in every car, it's a part of your everyday reality, and it's normal. So whatever we call impossible or accidents or coincidences today, in 100 years from now, we're going to have different explanations for them. Things like levitation, telekinesis, telepathic communication.
Which exist, which are real.
Of course. We just don't understand it yet. So we call them, maybe not we, but many call them impossible. It's not impossible. We just haven't reached that level of awareness yet collectively.
And my other question, sorry, was, so you don't have to be ill to go into the EESystem. You can go in with just like an intention of.
Yeah, would you wait for illness to come up in order to treat it?
No.
Or would you prevent it beforehand to make that illness impossible to live inside of you?
So it optimizes.
It keeps you at that optimal state, yes, through the charge, yes.
Thank you.
And then we'll go to you right after.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
When you were talking about these torsion fields, is there an ideal number of towers, like when we say 24 versus 4, or 48? Would 48 be better than 24, and 24 be better than 4? What is the ideal situation, firstly? And secondly, these former or places that were open earlier tended to put the towers at the ceiling line, or instead of towers, they put them at the ceiling line. And I spoke to one center recently that said they were moving and they thought they were going to do the same setup rather than towers. What is the difference in that? And then I'll give you my second question.
Sure. I personally like towers better, just to answer what you just said, because they're more stable and there's less room for error. When you have on what you're talking about, you're kind of putting them like that. There is more room for error because you have 24 pieces that can go wrong as opposed to 4 towers that can go wrong. So it's less pieces for things to move and come out of calibration. The answer to your first question is, you can call it better or worse. I call it stronger and weaker. So the bigger the system, the stronger the field. The smaller the system, the weaker the field. There have been incredible things with 8 units. There have been incredible things with 12s. And there have been now, because there are a lot of 24s coming all over the place, we'll really be able to weigh that data and see what's the true difference between the 24 and the 8. I can't tell you that for a fact in terms of data, because that data is coming out. It's something that's now happening with people reporting and so on and so forth. But simplistically speaking and scientifically speaking, the 24 is stronger than the 12.
So would 48 be better than 24 or not, or is there a cutoff point?
I wouldn't say that there's a cutoff point, but I think that that would be a better question for Dr. Michael, because I don't want to mislead. I don't know, because then the next question is, can there be too much? Right? What about 96?
I talked to her about that.
And she says no, because you're creating a stronger, coherent field. To me, that makes sense. I'm not a quantum physicist, so I don't know the nuances of that. But to me, that makes sense. It just becomes a stronger and more coherent field. What I would like to know is what's the true difference between the 24, the 48, or a 96? And is it, when you go from the 48 to, let's say, a 96, is it double the power? Or is it not double the power and it's just stronger by not as much of a ratio? That's something that I would like to know, that, again, we'll be able to study and understand over time.
And as far as other items holistically that centers are using, I read an article about one center using singing bowls, for example. Have you found any particular therapies or other modalities that work very well in conjunction at the same time that you're in this system?
The purpose of the Energy Enhancement System specifically is to enhance whatever is in it. You take any modality, that modality will become enhanced. You can't, no modality that you bring in there will interfere with the other. It's not gonna like, you're not gonna have the EES can't work in conjunction with the modality, because the EES, simplistically speaking, without the human body part of it, with light and collision and all that, is simply creating a balanced field of energy. So if you're doing Reiki in a balanced field of energy versus a distorted field of energy, it will be better in the balanced field. There's nothing that a balanced field of energy would not make better in terms of when you're using that modality. I know you use multiple things at your system.
And you get a massage. I got multiple massages in there. Everything you do inside the system becomes better because it's just what you said.
Yes, it's as simple as, because some people say, well, I learned this and I heard this. There's no room for learning or hearing. There's room for laws. Law number one, you're in a coherent field of energy. That means that no matter what anybody tells you next, you know what comes after that. A coherent field of energy yields a coherent field of a coherent environment. Coherent environment allows for everything to work better, not just your body. So naturally, the answer to that, regardless of, and not that you said this, but I've heard people say, well, I heard this and I heard that. You don't need to trust me on what I'm saying, because what I'm giving you is not my opinion, it's a fact. This is how energy works. We know the basic fundamental laws. You know everything that builds upon it. So in short, there is nothing that it would hurt, and it will only enhance whatever you're bringing in conjunction with.
Okay, thank you for the response to that. And the last thing I wanted to say is I'm very thankful for Jeffrey's facility, and with Alice and all the other people who work there. I've gone there for almost a year now, and while I haven't seen any great changes, I'm taking into consideration your comments about where we're at spiritually, etc. And so I appreciate that they're there, and they're very compassionate and really want to help people.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Most people in a situation like that would say, what do you mean? What's going on? I'm not seeing anything. Well, if you're at an optimal charge of 70 millivolts, you're going to stay at that optimal charge of 70 millivolts. It's going to be different than a person that has, for example, let's say you're at 70 and I'm at 30, or you're at 65 and I'm at 30 electrical charge millivolts in my system intracellularly. Then I'm going to experience a change of 40 points. You're going to experience a change of 5 points. So the experience of that will be more drastic on my side than yours. So you're probably just a very healthy person.
Thank you.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, I have a few questions, but they're quick. Number one, talk about med beds. You heard about med beds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number two.
Let's start with number one.
Okay.
Okay. It's funny every time somebody brings up that word. Because nobody actually knows what the hell they're talking about.
I hear about it all the time.
Nobody knows. They're like, what about the med beds? I'm like, okay, define it. Tell me what a med bed is. So let's define it first. Okay, med beds that people think exist. And this is simply from a lack of awareness, because nothing can do this. Okay? It's from the movies. There were those movies that, and by the way, there are high technologies that elites use that are great, but they don't contradict everything that we just learned here. So med beds from the movies are basically this thing that you walk into, and however they work, scanning and sending frequencies and things like that, fix all of your problems, and then you walk out and everything's fine.
Right. Star Trek.
Nothing ever, no matter what, will ever be able to do that, and if anything can do that, it will be extremely temporary. Because there's no such thing as a technology that can take away that karmic cycle. There's no such thing as a technology that will take away your responsibility for your own health. Some people, they hear med beds, they think, okay, so I'm gonna go into this thing, I'm gonna spend 2 hours there, and then I'm gonna go eat my big bag of McDonald's,
Right.
Coca-Cola. And it doesn't work like that. Because if you're not operating holistically, then nothing will ever be able to help you, no matter how powerful that technology is. So in short, what a med bed should really be is a high form of technology that works according to the highest thing that we know, which is light, energy, frequency, and vibration, to help the body do what it does best, which is heal itself. And that's exactly what the Energy Enhancement System does. But people say, but we thought it was this. That doesn't exist. That's not how it works. So, redefinition. But you had a second part to your question, then we'll go to you.
Second and third. Have you been asked to go to the Ark to the dome?
No.
Or not yet?
No, and I think it's
Okay.
going to be a very long time if I'm even the person ever chosen to do so.
Okay, well, would you understand my question?
No, not after you said that.
You were going to be asked eventually.
No, I was one of the people being considered for something.
Considered,
That
right.
doesn't mean that that's exactly what's going to happen.
And lastly, talking about, echoing what you were talking about, I publish a Hispanic newspaper.
Spanish?
Yes,
Okay,
we reach 1 million Hispanics every Friday.
let's go.
Yes.
We'll talk.
I contacted your office before.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be in touch with you directly. Thank you, I
Yes.
appreciate it. All righty. We'll go to you, and then we're coming straight to you.
I read your book, Raising Knowledge, and I guess you were talking about this gentleman, Ray, that you interviewed,
Yeah.
who's a good friend of yours, and his meeting with Rabbi AA,
Yeah.
as part
AA.
of TLS.
His initials, yes,
Right, and he's supposedly 450 years old.
424.
Okay. So, were you ever shown any insights to why he's living so long, while the rest of us are dying at 90 or 100?
Number one, not everybody's meant to live that long. Even in biblical times, not everybody lived that long. You heard of the people that lived till 900 if you choose to believe that. But the majority of people were just not, 60 and 50, but they lived normal lives. Not everybody's destiny is to live that long. Let's start with that. Number two, the way that he actually lived is, it's extreme. Raw food, ate very little, eats with his hands. It's very minimalistic, and you talk about somebody that's at such a high spiritual level, he doesn't necessarily operate in the same way that we do with that food pyramid, because he can connect to the sun in a different way. It's like a whole different ball game that's beyond the linear terms that we understand. But you're speaking about a very spiritually oriented person, somebody that uses prayer, meditation every single day, and sleeps very little, 2 to 3 hours a night. Very little.
How do we get access to that information?
You do the work.
Where can I find the access to that information?
Everywhere, all around you. Read, study, allow your path to guide you to the next book that it's going to bring you to. You don't find the guru will find you. If a person's meant to find you and you're meant to reach something, believe me, the perfect person is going to come into your path to show you exactly what you need to do next. It may not be a part of your destiny to do that. Just like some people have a destiny of, in many different ways. Some people have a destiny of being billionaires, and some people have, financially speaking, some people have a destiny that has nothing to do with money. And their destiny has to do with raising a family and focusing on their children. Everybody has their own destiny. Some people have a destiny of speaking to a lot of people. Other people don't. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means we have different roles, right? Like you're very good at things that I may not be good at all, and vice versa. So it's about finding your purpose according to your divine will, and then running in that path. Because why would you try and become an expert in something you're not coming? Like I'm not meant to be a computer program. I'm meant to speak to people. If you look at my astrological chart, the thing that is aligned with my purpose specifically is communication. For you, it may be something else. So it's follow that path and then perfect the path that you came here to experience and make it as wide as possible. Some people are here to impact 1 billion people, and some people are here to impact one person. As a matter of fact, the way that Unified Healing started, there was one person. I'll show you how things go full circle. There was one person, okay? One person that I was sitting at dinner with, and he said one word. I don't even know what that word was. And that one word sparked Unified Healing. And then, interestingly enough, a few months later, he got cancer. And 150 hours or 250 hours in the system, I forgot what it was, his cancer is now in remission. So imagine he didn't say that one word. You understand? There are ways that things connect in a network that we don't understand, and it doesn't really matter if we get it or not. It's a matter of doing what you came here to do and allowing the butterfly effect to do the rest.
I just had another part of the question I had. Law of one raw material.
Yes.
75,000 years ago, the average man on the planet lived 900 years.
Yes,
And,
I believe that.
And that through disharmony, negativity, and, illusion of separation, that and the wars basically brought the life expectancy down. Most of us, unfortunately, die spiritual children. We don't live long enough to understand the wisdom of life and how to use these energies correctly.
No, because it's not about the length of your life. It's about what you do with the experiences during the duration of your life. So you have 70-year-olds today that are still dealing with tests from when they were 20, and you have 20-year-olds today that are more advanced than 75-year-olds. What's the difference? If one lived 20 years and the other one lived 70 years, how can the 20-year-old be more advanced spiritually than the 70-year-old? So age is a part of it, experience is a part of it, but that's not your whole equation. The part of the equation that people always forget is what are you doing with the experiences? Because every experience that comes your way is a test. If you keep failing the test by not learning the lesson, you're going to keep retaking it. That's why you could see people in high school that are 5 years left behind. It has nothing to do with their age. It has nothing to do with their experience. It's a part of it, but it's did they learn the lesson to pass the test to graduate to the next level. So in that way, you can have 25-year-olds that are 80-year-olds and 80-year-olds that are 15-year-olds, not based on the physical age, but based on what they're doing in their time. In that way, you can actually evolve the equivalent of 40 years collectively relative to everybody else in 6 months. If you just pass the lessons or understand the lessons and pass the tests that are coming your way. So now imagine you know that and you live 900 years. You're 1 million in terms of your spiritual evolution. I know you had a question.
Actually, it wasn't so much a question. I like what you said about that people hear about a technology or a modality and they think, okay, I'm going to go in and do this and I'm going to be cured.
They keep moving, and the ones that understand it keep going and keep growing. And that's how the world works. So now we're in a really interesting period. Over the next year or two, you're going to see, for lack of a better phrase, the boys separate from the men. And you're going to see, we already know one of them, you're going to see who has it and can keep going and riding it to beautiful places. And see who, maybe it wasn't a part of their path and they tried and it's all good. And then naturally, when those people don't make it that way, there are other people that perfectly align and come in. And that's something that I'm learning also. That's something that, the way that I speak to center owners today that want to be center owners, and the way that I spoke to them a year ago changed. Today I remind them it's not as simple as you think. If you think that you're coming in here and you're good and there's a lock and key that you turn and everything's fine, you're missing the whole point.
It's cash cow.
It's not how it works. It's not how it works. But that's what separates the boys from the men, and it comes to those lessons. And some people learn it the hard way, and some people get it, and neither is good or bad. It's just that evolution process. So the hard part with having a lot of different pieces, almost like when you want to watch a movie and you have 5 people, it's very hard to decide. Now imagine having 300 people. So way number 1, which we've tried, is okay, everybody do this. Doesn't work. So instead of saying everybody do this, you'll have some people moving in certain directions that we know will be productive and beneficial big picture. But then you have 2 things. You have some people that aren't in alignment with that way of doing things. And you have other people that just have their own great ideas because they're the people on the ground. They're the soldiers on the field that say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So the other way that we're now evolving into understanding that whole picture is saying, listen, we're going to recommend X, Y, and Z. We can't control across the board how you're going to do this unless we were much more ingrained in every operation. So we're going to recommend and give a base. You can choose to use that base. You can choose not to use that base. But everybody's encouraged to grow beyond their base and that base in their own way. That's really what makes the difference between a successful one and one that's empty. Because there's, like you said, what's your name?
Deanna.
Deanna. Like you said, the feeling of community. Community, you're not selling a chair here. That's not what's going on. You're not having somebody come and sit in a chair for an hour or 2 or sleep somewhere. It's a community. It's a holistic picture of something bigger than that, something of people, which you guys know, people coming together. Your gift that you were given is bringing people together. Your bridge, everybody knows Jeffrey Lewis, because his gift was bringing people together. His gift was the little that I know you. He's an affiliate of everything that connects the dots everywhere and is smart enough. No, he is. We all know it. And he's smart enough to take all the dots and make them a cohesive picture. That's what we need to learn when it comes to not just running an EESystem center. It's running any operation. It's running any community. It's not a simple thing. But if you have the gift, you got it. And you'll. It's just what will show that separation, but in a good way, of weeding out, and the strong weeds come out. And that's not about competition. It's just about its evolution, And personally, those are the people that I want to work with. Because it's hard when somebody doesn't get it, and then you have to spend so much time answering all these questions that if they had that from the beginning, it would have been so much easier. In London, we have a center. The guy made back all his money. He hasn't even opened his doors yet. That's a guy that knows what he's doing. He's got the big picture. So he's got the big picture, not just business speaking. He's got it spiritually speaking. Now when I speak to people moving forward, and now it's mainly outside of the U.S. because we stopped here, is who are you? And do you understand these things? And if you don't, you could still do it. But I'm not sure that we want to be a part of this network with it, because it's going to end up going down instead of flying beyond the stars. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, both of you, because it's the holistic picture of real education, understanding from within, to bring it to your center. Yes.
Is there a reason when going into these? I teach yoga, I paint, and when I go into the session, deeper things come through, information, and so I don't go to heal a lot of stuff, but is that part of the reason? Because then I go home and I paint, and I work with the chakras and all that, and so this enhances whatever is going on. Again,
you're creating the coherent field of energy, allows you to tap into everything that you are. Remember that 100th monkey effect.
Yeah.
There's this quantum field of data and information that's infinite. We just need to tap into it. Creating the torsion field is basically tapping into infinity. And in infinity is where those downloads happen.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like some days I'm floating in space.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing things, and I see them as used, and other days it's not like that, and like my knee hurts, so my knee's getting worked on. But those things are the things that the chakras and the colors, and I know them, so I guess thank you. And and I just find it like a divine space to be in.
Yep.
And you get into meditation, like boom.
Fast. Especially if you're tapped in already, which obviously it seems like you are. So, and it enhances the whole thing. We're going to do 2 more questions before we bring it to a close. I'm going to choose people that we haven't done yet.
I have a technical question.
Yes.
I've been going to Full Spectrum for about 6 months.
Okay.
And I was in Florida for a couple of months and went to Palm Beach Gardens in North Palm Beach. It's 1 mile from me.
Okay.
And they were suggesting that rather than 3 1-hour sessions, that it would be more beneficial to do 1 3-hour session.
Yes, it's just like
Why is
meditation.
that?
Because if you wanted to do 10 minutes of meditation per day, would you do 10 1-minute sessions or 1 10-minute sessions? Which one would drop you in deeper? An obvious answer is the 1 10-minute session, because you have more time to get further into what you're doing.
Okay.
If you wanted to run, are you going to run, and you wanted to run 100 yards, are you going to run 10 yards each time and come back and do that over and over again? You're going to run in one shot and run the 100 yards. It's a different exertion of energy when you do the 100 in one shot in the run than it is 10 times 10 yards. You know what I'm saying? So it's just about being able to drop deeper. Personally, I wouldn't do anything less than 2 hours.
Okay.
I
usually do 2 or 3.
Yeah, I would say, and Dr. Michael says the same thing, if you go less than 2 hours, you're wasting your time. Because just the first hour is the dropping in period. And once you're dropped in, you want to experience what you want to experience. The best you can do is your overnights. Because not only are you going for a long period of time, you're actually sleeping while you're doing it, which allows your body to really going to where it needs to go into. 'Cause your body's already healing itself while it sleeps. Now you're enhancing that even further, it's like sleeping on steroids. In a good way. There's somebody over, yes.
Can anybody go into the EESystem? Like, for instance, if you have a pacemaker, or if you're pregnant, or, so anybody?
Pregnancy specifically, it's amazing for it. Again, bring it back to the fundamental law of the torsion field and your environment. You're in a positive environment, it's not going to negate or hurt anything, it will just enhance that thing. It's hard for some people to wrap their heads around it because we've been programmed to consequences and like the contraindications and things like that. When you're in a coherent field of energy, you can't, it's not like, can the coherent field of energy hurt this? No, because the coherent field of energy can't hurt anything. Because the basic form of nature, the basic experience of reality is one of balance. The basic flow, it's not on here anymore, is your torsion field. So if you're bringing it back to the base, and the torsion field is not in duality of good and bad. The torsion field is of unity of all is one. There is no good and bad. There is no health and disease in your torsion field. There's just flow. And flow knows one thing, which is health. So you're not going to experience a negative thing from that. With what you will experience is a detox. And a detox can be an experience of a negative experience because you may cough, and there may, however your body will detox itself. But that's your body purging. That's not your body hurting itself. Alrighty, I think I want to meet some of you also, and we're going to have to get out of here in a bit. So we're going to bring it to a close. I want to say thank you to Jeffrey and all of you guys for making this possible. He was one of the first. He was literally one of the first that brought this before it was a thing. And I personally just want to see you keep growing and keep opening and keep expanding. And there's going to be a lot of room for that over the next period of time, especially when you see some of those people that in a year or two from now say, I don't know what's going on here. People like you go in and take over these things. Because it's you guys that lead these processes. So thank you to Jeffrey, and thank you for all of you for supporting these things.
Thank you.
It's bigger than